Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. My name is Alex. I worked maintenance on the Odysseus Horizon, a mid-sized research vessel equipped with everything from deep-sea sensors to hydroponic gardens. We were about 2 months into a 6-month deployment, somewhere in the North Atlantic. A quiet part of the ocean where signals went to die and time seemed to stretch. We weren't alone out there, but we may as well have been. It started with the static, not the kind you hear on radios or old televisions. This was different, a humming that buzzed through the ship's intercoms late at night. It would fade in and out, like a whisper you couldn't quite catch. I first noticed it on a night shift, doing rounds on the lower decks. Everything was routine until I passed by the old medical bay unused since we set off. The intercom in that hallway kicked on by itself. Just a low, steady hum. Not voices, not music, just wrong. I paused outside the door. The light above it flickered, something I chalked up to old wiring. The ship was always playing tricks like that. But the hum got louder the longer I stood there, almost like it knew I was listening. I tapped the intercom box. Nothing. It didn't shut off. I went to check the panel for any loose wires, but before I could open it, the sound stopped. Silence, sudden and complete. No fading. No click. Just gone. I stood there, heart pounding in the quiet. Then I heard the thud, from inside the medical bay. One solid knock. Not mechanical, not random. A knock that said, "I know you're there." I didn't open the door. Instead, I backed away slowly, not taking my eyes off it. My flashlight beam caught something on the floor beneath the door, a slick trail of dark fluid. I told myself it was just a leak from the lab upstairs. Some kind of experimental coolant, maybe. We had stuff like that on board. Still, I radioed it in. The comm crackled. Static again. Then, finally, a voice. "Copy that, Alex. We'll check it in the morning." Morning never came the way we expected. The next day, 2 of the senior crew were missing. Dr. Monroe and Technician Fail, both assigned to labs near the medical wing. Their names were announced over the PA system around 0900 hours, followed by a polite request to report to the bridge if seen or heard from. That was command speak for "we have no idea where they are." I didn't mention what I heard the night before. Not yet. Instead, I kept my mouth shut and went about my checks. Part of me thought maybe this was just stress. 2 months at sea will start to mess with you. The lack of sky, the endless humming of the engines, the weird dreams. Everyone had been feeling it. But the thing that really tipped me off? The dog. We had one aboard, ship mascot, sort of. A little mutt named Sadie, belonged to one of the botanists. Smart, sweet, alert. She'd usually greet crew in the halls, wagging her tail and sniffing for treats. But that morning she was nowhere to be found. No barking, no food touched, just her leash coiled neatly by the airlock. They didn't announce that over the PA. I only knew because I found her collar on the floor outside the lab, right near that same trail of fluid I'd seen before. But this time, it had dried. Not like oil, it was flaky, like crusted paint, and the smell, sharp and bitter, like rust and mold. I leaned closer, then heard something under the floor. A scrape, then another knock. I backed up, hand tightening around my flashlight like it was going to help. I didn't sleep that night. 2 days later, the emergency alert went off. Security Level 1, restrict all access to medical and lower decks. Do not approach unauthorized personnel. Stay in your cabins. It repeated every 2 minutes. The door to the medical bay was sealed, not just locked, welded shut. One of the engineers told me he'd done it himself, said he saw something inside that wasn't right. Didn't have eyes, he said. At least, not where they were supposed to be. We thought he was delirious. He hadn't slept in 36 hours, had a fever. But when he passed out and they brought him to the infirmary, not the sealed bay, the backup one, we saw the bruises on his arms. Like fingers had gripped him too tight. Like something tried to drag him backward. People started panicking quietly. Not screaming or running, not yet. Just subtle things. Fewer people in the mess hall. Whispered arguments. Locked cabin doors. It was like the entire ship was holding its breath. And I was beginning to think we weren't the only ones breathing. 3 days into the lockdown, the ship changed. It was subtle, at first lights dimming more often than usual. The PA system stuttering mid-sentence, and the ever-present hum beneath our feet growing louder. Almost like the ship itself was groaning. We were told to stay in our rooms, and most of us did, but I couldn't. Maintenance doesn't stop, not even during emergencies. That's the thing about being crew when stuff breaks. Someone has to fix it, and that someone was usually me. So, I was on deck 3 checking the ventilation system. A few crew had been complaining about the air, said it smelled strange. Thick, metallic, almost sweet. I figured it was just mold in the filters, nothing major. I was wrong. I opened one of the maintenance hatches in Corridor B and climbed into the narrow shaft. The smell hit me immediately. Not mold, something else. Foul and organic, like meat left out in the sun. I crawled about 10 meters in when I noticed something odd. Scratches. Long, jagged scrapes along the inside of the ductwork. Not from tools or corrosion. These were deliberate, made by something with nails or claws, and they were fresh. Then I found the blood, a smear across the metal wall, thin, dried, but unmistakable. Right beside it, a patch of long, dark hair snagged on a bolt. I froze, holding my breath. There was no report of anyone injured, no alerts, no accident logs. Whatever happened up here, no one had logged it. That's when I heard it. A skittering sound, fast, sharp, moving toward me. Something was in the vents. I didn't wait to find out what. I backed out, slipping and scraping my arm on the way down. The hatch slammed shut behind me, echoing louder than I expected. I sat there for a moment, panting, bleeding just a little. That's when the comm unit on my belt crackled. But it wasn't a voice on the other end. It was breathing. Slow, wet, close. I ripped the earpiece off and crushed the button, cutting the signal. I didn't file a report, I didn't tell anyone because deep down I knew they wouldn't believe me. And because part of me didn't want to know who or what was breathing on the other end. That night, we lost the first cabin. Room 312, a twin bunk near the starboard side. 2 researchers were stationed there. No one heard them scream. We only found out when the morning shift noticed their door had been left wide open. Inside, it looked like a storm had torn through. Mattress ripped open, blood smeared on the walls, and deep gouges in the metal floor. There was no sign of the crew, not even a footprint. Only a message scratched into the bunk frame. They're not dead. That's when the whispers started spreading. Not official ones. No, command wasn't saying anything, but the rest of us, the ones who worked in the bowels of the ship, we talked. Someone swore they saw Monroe. The doctor, the one who disappeared days ago, said he was standing at the far end of the hallway near the cold storage unit, motionless. Just standing there, head tilted, like he was listening to something none of us could hear. When the crewman tried to speak to him, Monroe turned around and walked away, backwards. Not like someone in a trance, not sleepwalking, just wrong, unnatural. And his skin, pale, discolored, the kind of pallor you only see in people who've been gone a long time. From that point on, everyone stayed in groups. No one walked the halls alone. No one dared go near the medical wing. Except me. I didn't have a choice. A power relay had blown in the subdeck, and someone had to go down there to fix it. Of course, it was me. I grabbed my toolkit, strapped on my utility light, and headed for the lower hatch. It was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that presses on your ears. The kind that feels watched. I climbed down the ladder, each rung colder than the last, until I hit the bottom. The air was thick damp, stale, and warm. My light flickered as I walked down the corridor toward the relay panel. Everything about the space felt off, like the walls had shifted slightly when no one was looking. Then I saw the handprint. On the inside of the panel door, smudged, bloody, fingernails missing. Something had been inside. I opened the access hatch with trembling hands. Inside wasn't circuitry. It was a body, crammed into the panel, bent in ways that bones shouldn't bend. The face was torn, not ripped open, but peeled, eyes wide, mouth frozen in a scream I couldn't hear. Whoever it was had been hiding. Or maybe they were put there, stored, like meat. I backed away slowly. Then I heard something overhead. A soft thump. Then a dragging sound across the metal grating above. Something was crawling in the ceiling. The moment I got back topside, I sealed the hatch behind me and cut the power to that deck. If Command had a problem with it, they could yell later. But nobody did. Because by then, the captain had locked himself in the bridge and wasn't answering calls. And more crew were disappearing. Only they weren't just vanishing. We started seeing them. In the corners of hallways, through fogged windows, standing in the shadows like they were waiting for something. Like they were watching. And sometimes, if you looked too long, they'd move. Fast. Wrong. Twisted. That night, the emergency alert changed. The voice on the intercom was different. Not the usual robotic tone, this one was distorted. Like someone trying to speak through water. The message repeated every 10 minutes. Do not engage with returned personnel. They are no longer part of the crew. Stay in your cabins. Barricade doors. If you see them, do not make eye contact. We all knew then. It wasn't just an accident. Something had gotten in, or worse, something had been made down there in the dark. And now it was spreading. 3 days. That's how long we'd been locked and sealed off from the lower decks, living off ration packs and anxiety. The mess hall was quiet. No laughter, no music. Just the sounds of clinking utensils and heavy breathing. You could tell who had seen something. Their eyes were different wide, always moving, never resting. No one said the word, not out loud. But we all knew. The infection wasn't just a sickness. It was something else. Something that changed them. Slowly, at first, then all at once. I watched it happen to someone I knew. Jules was part of hydroponics. Quiet guy, always listening to old Earth music on a little headset clipped to his belt. We shared a meal most nights, just talking nonsense to fill the silence. But one evening, he didn't show up. I found him the next morning, sitting cross-legged outside his cabin door. He was pale, sweating, his eyes sunken. I asked what happened. He didn't answer, just stared at the opposite wall, trembling. That's when I noticed the blood under his fingernails. He'd been scratching something. I looked over and saw what he'd carved into the wall. I hear them in the walls. I reported it to Command. No answer. So I brought Jules to the infirmary myself, the backup one, not the sealed bay. Only, when I got there, the room was empty. Not abandoned, just emptied, beds gone, medical supplies stripped, lights flickering. A pool of something sticky drying in the center of the floor. That's when Jules started humming. At first, it sounded like one of his songs, a tune I vaguely recognized, but then his voice cracked, turned hollow, mechanical. It wasn't a song anymore. It was a signal. He stood up, eyes rolling back, mouth wide, and then he screamed, not with fear, not in pain. It was a call. A sound so loud it shook the lights, a sound that didn't belong in a human throat. I ran, left him there. He never followed. But that scream, I still hear it. Every time the ship creaks, every time the lights flicker like a warning or a promise. Later that night, I broke protocol. I went back to the sealed medical wing. Not because I'm brave, but because I had to know. I brought a cutting torch from engineering. The metal door had been welded shut days ago, but I found the seam, lit the flame, and started slicing through. It took 20 minutes. Every second I expected something to bang on the other side, but nothing did. Silence. The door fell open with a hiss of stale air. Inside it was cold. The kind of cold that soaks into your bones. The lights were dead. The walls were damp. I stepped inside slowly, flashlight sweeping across empty gurneys and shattered monitors. And then I found the tanks. 6 glass chambers lined the far wall, each one connected by tubes to a central console. Inside the chambers, the fluid was thick, murky. Something floated in each one. Humanoid shapes, some barely formed, others too formed. One of them looked right at me. I froze. It didn't move again, but I swear for just a second its eyes flicked open, glowing faintly under the surface like a signal flare in the dark. I backed out, fast, tripped on something. When I hit the floor, I saw a security badge. Dr. Monroe. And next to it, smeared in faded red across the tiles, a single word. Reversion. I didn't know what it meant. I do now. That night, someone broke into the mess hall. We heard the crash, the shouting, the sudden silence. By the time I got there, 4 crew were missing. Gone without a trace. Plates still warm. Coffee still steaming. One wall had a smear of handprints, not just bloody burned, as if the skin had melted on contact. And in the center of the room, scrawled in cutlery and cables, was another message. We were never alone. Someone or something had come aboard. Maybe not during this mission. Maybe much earlier. Maybe it had always been here. Sleeping, waiting. And now the ship was its home. I tried to access the main terminal that evening. Thought maybe I could send a message, a signal, anything. But the system rejected my login. Access denied. User unknown. Crew member not recognized. I stared at the screen in disbelief. I scanned my badge again. Same result. It was like I had been erased. As if the ship had decided I no longer belonged. A hand touched my shoulder. I spun around, ready to swing, but it was Vera, the comms officer. Her face pale, her hands trembling. They're learning, she whispered. Every time someone changes, they remember more. They're thinking now. I didn't ask how she knew. I didn't want to. That night, the emergency alert changed again. The voice was clearer. It didn't sound like a machine anymore. It sounded like Monroe. We are no longer sick. We are beyond flesh. We are the new crew. And then, just before it cut out faint, layered beneath the message we heard screaming. Real, raw, human. And then, laughter. After the new message played, the ship went completely silent. No hum from the engines. No air filtration noise, not even the usual creak of metal groaning against the cold ocean pressure. It was like the whole Odysseus Horizon had stopped breathing. We were floating, dead in the water. No power, no lights, no signal. Just us. And them. I stayed in the upper corridor that night, wrapped in a thermal blanket, listening for movement. I kept a wrench in my hand, not much use, but the weight helped. I kept telling myself I could fight if I had to, that maybe whatever these things were, they could still bleed. But I wasn't so sure anymore. Around midnight, I heard the vents again. Not the usual clank or hum, something crawling. Slow, careful, like it didn't want to be noticed, but I was listening. And then the voice came. Not from the PA system, not a scream. A whisper, right beside my ear. "We remember you." I jumped, swung the wrench. Nothing there. Just cold air and darkness. But I knew it wasn't a dream. The words had weight. They sat in my chest like ice. I wasn't alone in that hallway. And I wasn't supposed to be alive. In the morning, if you could even call it that, in space as dark as this, I found the mess hall completely empty. Chairs overturned. Trays half filled. A single boot left on the floor like its owner had been snatched mid-step. Vera was gone. So was Tucker from engineering. Only 12 of us were left. We gathered near the maintenance bay, the only place still sealed tight with backup battery power. We argued about sending out a distress beacon manually, but even that wasn't possible anymore. The dish had been physically torn from its base, not just damaged, ripped off, like something didn't want us to call for help. I remember turning to Rami, our systems tech. He was shivering, pale. And then I noticed his eyes. They weren't right. Slightly sunken, ringed in bruised gray. And behind the iris a flicker, a faint glow, like something inside was watching us through him. I asked him if he was okay. He smiled. Not a warm smile. Not a human one. Later, I found a recording in the engineering archive. Something hidden deep in the system logs, not labeled, not filed. Just raw data from a helmet cam. It was Monroe. Before he vanished. The footage showed him deep in the lower lab, not the medical bay, but the restricted sector below that. A place I thought was just storage. He was speaking into the recorder, voice frantic. "We opened something, a canister from the trench. It was organic, but dormant. Looked fossilized. It pulsed when exposed to oxygen. We ran scans, it showed neural activity, then it disappeared from the chamber overnight. Just gone." Next morning, Carter was different. She didn't talk. She just stood there, staring at the wall. We ran tests. Her brain was active, but wrong, lighting up in ways we'd never seen. She said one thing before she disappeared. "They're still dreaming." Monroe's camera shook. Alarms blared. And then the feed cut out in static. That was the last anyone saw of him. Until he started talking through the emergency system. We didn't know what to do after that. We argued about abandoning ship, taking the life pods, but the moment someone tried to access the launch bay, they vanished. The hatch was still open. No sign of struggle. Only a trail of wet footprints leading back into the hall. Bare feet. Not human. Too many toes. I spent the next day in the observation deck, watching the water. It was the only place with a view of the outside. And what I saw still makes my skin crawl. At first, just shadows. Far beneath the waves. Shapes moving, huge and slow like whales. But not whales. No fins, no tails. Just long, gliding masses that twisted and turned like they were swimming upward, towards us, and then, for a second, Just a second, I saw a face in the glass, pressed against the outside, grinning. Eyes too wide, mouth too long, skin like stone and ash. It looked like Carter, and she was smiling. I ran through the halls, past the storage bay, through engineering until I tripped over something in the dark. It was Jules. At least, what was left of him. He wasn't dead. Not exactly. His body was half covered in this black, vein-like growth. His skin was gray, stretched thin over bone. His mouth opened, but no sound came out, just a dry gasp, like wind over sand. He reached out, not to grab me, to touch me. I didn't let him. I ran again. And as I turned the corner, I heard something behind me, dozens of feet, all moving together, dragging, stumbling, clicking. They weren't hiding anymore. The remaining crew locked ourselves in the cargo hold, barricaded the doors with crates and welding tools. It wouldn't hold forever, but it bought us time. That's when I told them what I'd seen. What I'd found in the med bay, the tanks, the footage, the voice. And the thing Carter said. They're still dreaming. What if this wasn't an infection? What if it was awakening? Something buried in the ocean. Something we brought on board, and now, it wasn't just inside the ship. It was inside us. That night, someone tried to open the hold from the outside, banging, scraping, pleading. A voice that sounded like Vera. It's okay now, open the door, we're cured, we're better. But it wasn't her. She laughed. Not like a person. Like a recording playing backwards, echoing with static and something wet underneath. We didn't open the door. The laughing didn't stop for hours. Then came the final transmission. The ship's intercom buzzed to life. Not broken this time, clear, calm. This vessel belongs to the deep now. You are the last. Join us. And then silence. There were 5 of us left. Maybe 6, if Rami still counted. After what I saw in his eyes, I wasn't sure. The cargo hold became our tomb, sealed. Dark, lit only by emergency lanterns that flickered more than they glowed. We took turns staying awake, guarding the door. Listening. Always listening. You start to lose your grip in places like that, where there's no sky, no day or night, just cold steel walls and the feeling that something is always just outside the light. Waiting. On the 3rd night, Talia snapped. She had been whispering to herself all day, scratching her nails against the crate beside her. She hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, just stared at the far wall like it was showing her something no one else could see. Then she stood up, walked to the door, and placed her hand on the panel. They're calling me, she said. They know my name. We tried to stop her. We begged. But she smiled, not with her mouth, but with her whole face. A grin stretched by something behind her skin, like her bones were smiling too. She opened the door. What we saw. It wasn't quick. It wasn't clean. It was wrong. They were waiting for her. Dozens of them, bodies we used to recognize, twisted by something deeper than decay. Their eyes glowed faintly, like distant lights underwater. Their mouths opened, and from every one of them the same whisper came, "We're still dreaming." Then they pulled her into the dark. We sealed the door again, hands shaking, backs against the crates. Talia was gone, but her voice echoed through the vents for the rest of the night. That morning, the temperature dropped. Condensation froze along the ceiling. Our breath became fog. We found frost creeping down the walls like veins. And then the ship began to move. Not the engines, those were still dead. I mean the structure itself. Pipes expanding, bulkheads flexing. It was like something massive was shifting in the lower decks, something waking up. Rami stood up and calmly said, "They're coming from below." He walked to the wall, placed his hand on the metal, and whispered something I couldn't make out. Then he turned to us, smiled with too many teeth, and said, "I saw it. In the tank. We were never meant to leave the trench." Then he screamed a sound that wasn't a sound. A vibration, low and deep, that rattled our bones. He collapsed to the floor, seizing. His skin bubbled like it was boiling from the inside, and then he stopped moving. We didn't bury him. We didn't dare. The rest of us, me, Hayes, and the twins, Connor and Elle, decided we couldn't stay in the cargo hold. Not anymore. The cold was rising, the walls were whispering, and the lights were starting to dim one by one. We armed ourselves with whatever we had, welding torches, steel rods, makeshift spears. We headed for the bridge. If we could make it, maybe we could find a way to reboot the emergency systems, maybe send one last beacon. The halls were worse now. Covered in black tendrils, like roots. Wet, pulsing. They slithered down the walls across the floor. They moved if you stepped too close. Not fast, not aggressive, just aware, like they were listening. Watching. We passed a body in the crew lounge. Face frozen mid-scream, eyes wide. And yet, when I looked closer, I realized he was breathing. Shallow, steady, still alive. We didn't stop. We made it to the bridge. The door was still sealed reinforced titanium. We used Elle's clearance card, Hayes' override code. As the door slid open, we expected to find the captain. We did, sort of. He was standing by the viewing glass, staring out into the black. He didn't turn when we entered. His voice was soft, calm. "They showed me," he said. "What we are, what we were, what comes next." Hayes stepped forward. "Captain, we have to send a signal. We have to try." The captain turned. His face was pale, stretched thin. His eyes glowed not brightly, but deeply, like there was a storm behind them. He opened his mouth, and another voice came out. Not his, not human. It was all of them. "We are the memory of the deep. We are the flesh forgotten. You came seeking knowledge. Now you will carry it home." Connor lunged forward with the torch. The captain didn't fight back. He simply smiled, as if he'd been waiting for it. As if this was part of it. The flames touched his skin, and instead of burning, he cracked like dried clay. Split open, light pouring from within, screaming as something crawled out, something pale, long-limbed, wrapped in veins and dripping black fluid. It shrieked once, then scurried into the vents like a spider made of muscle and nightmares. We didn't go after it. We sealed the bridge. The final systems booted manually. Power came on just for a moment, long enough to pull up the external cameras. What we saw outside made my blood freeze. Dozens, maybe hundreds of shapes circling the ship in the water. Not fish, not people. Things. Long and slender. Skin like stone, no eyes. Just mouths, hundreds of them opening and closing in slow rhythmic pulses. And above them, barely visible in the darkness, a structure. Not man-made. A tower of bone and coral rising from the ocean floor, glowing faintly with the same light that flickered behind Monroe's eyes. And at its peak, a door, floating, open. Hayes started the beacon. A single signal, one word, infected. He hit send. The lights went out again. That night, we stayed in the bridge. I found a journal in the drawer under the nav console, not the captain's, older, yellowed pages, dated nearly 10 years before our launch. The final entry read, We dredged something from the black, a relic, thought it was a discovery, but it's a message not from the past, but the future. A warning written in flesh. They sleep in the blood of the world, and we are the dream. The intercom crackled one last time. A whisper, soft and distant. Join us, you were always part of this. Hayes sat down by the main window, quiet. Elle wept. Connor didn't say anything, just gripped his weapon tighter and stared at the door. Me? I'm writing this. Because I need someone to know. Even if no one ever hears it. Even if it never leaves this cursed ship. I need it said. We never found them in the deep. They found us. And they're remembering how to be human. We didn't sleep that last night. We didn't speak much either. The bridge was silent, wrapped in flickering shadows. Every light that blinked on the console seemed to do so slower than before, as if the ship itself was dying, or maybe choosing to rest. There were only 4 of us now. Then 3. Hayes was the next to go. He was quiet, calm. He said he wanted to watch the ocean. He stood at the main viewport for over an hour, never moving, barely blinking. I thought maybe he was trying to make peace with it, with everything we'd seen, everything we'd become. Then he whispered something under his breath. I leaned in to listen. It wasn't English. It wasn't anything, just wet syllables, like breath against water, looping endlessly. He turned to me, smiled, and stepped backward, into the glass. He didn't break it, he passed through it. Like the glass was water, and his body no longer obeyed the rules of flesh and bone. And then he was gone. The ocean rippled once outside, and then stilled. The rest of us, me, Elle, Connor, didn't move for hours. We didn't cry, we didn't scream. We had no energy left for fear. We were husks, waiting to crack open. The ship was breathing again. Not mechanically, organically. A pulse through the walls. A sound you feel in your bones more than your ears. Something was waking up below. Elle was the one who suggested we go back down. To the lower decks. To where it started, I thought she'd lost it. But then she said something that stuck with me. What if there's no way out but through? What if we couldn't run? What if this thing, this memory, living in our ship, in our blood, wasn't something to fight or escape? What if it was becoming, so we agreed, one last trip to the bottom? The elevator to the lowest subdeck hadn't worked in days. We pried it open manually and climbed down the maintenance shaft, rung by frozen rung. The deeper we went, the louder the sound grew. A low hum, rhythmic, like a heartbeat, like a chant without words. The ship was singing to itself. When we hit bottom, the air changed. It wasn't cold anymore. It was wet, heavy, breathing. The hallway was alive. Veins of black coral ran across the ceiling. The floor was soft, not metal anymore, but something organic, like walking on muscle. And the door, the one we weren't supposed to open, it was waiting. Round, smooth, pale. It wasn't made by us. It wasn't made by hands. It had grown there. Connor stepped forward first. He touched the surface and the door opened. Not with a hiss, not with hydraulics. It peeled open. And the sound behind it? Silence. Thick and full of presence, we entered. Inside was a chamber, not built grown. Walls lined with pulsing sacks of light, floating fragments of memory, images, faces we'd lost, places we'd forgotten, dreams we never had. The room knew us. And in the center, rising from the floor, the source. A pillar of black stone, slick with fluid, wrapped in bone and wire. It pulsed with light that didn't illuminate light that felt. That spoke. We didn't hear words. We felt them. We were cast into the dark. You pulled us from the deep. Now we remember. Now we become. Elle collapsed first. She fell to her knees, tears pouring from her eyes. Not fear. Relief? It's beautiful, she said. Connor stepped back, torch in hand, still thinking maybe we could end it. Destroy it. But it didn't fear us. Because it had already won. Connor raised his torch. And the light inside the chamber screamed, not in pain. In joy, the stone exploded in tendrils, wrapping him in a flash, lifting him into the air. He didn't even fight. His body went limp. And then, gone. Absorbed. I ran. Coward or survivor, it doesn't matter anymore. I ran through halls of flesh and shadow, the ship echoing with songs I couldn't unhear. I climbed until my hands bled, pulled myself back to the top deck, and locked myself in the last functioning room I could find. Communications, where I'm recording this. If you're hearing this, if this message ever escapes the Odysseus Horizon, know this. We didn't find infection. We didn't unleash a curse. We answered a call. Something below the trench, something older than time, deeper than thought has been dreaming in the blood of the world. And now it's awake, it's not coming. It's already here, wearing our skin, using our voices. Learning, becoming. And soon it won't need ships, or oceans, or us. This is Alex Harlow, Systems Maintenance Officer. Last survivor of the Odysseus Horizon, and I don't know what's real anymore. Because when I look in the mirror, I see someone smiling back, and it isn't me. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.